Our mission is love. Our vision is love. Jamaicans by justice, the people's champion, champion. Justice, justice for all. Justice under the law. Justice, Jamaica demand. Right to life, right to liberty. Justice, justice for all. Justice under the law. Justice, the people demand. Right to life and security. Oh, what a joy. Oh, what a peace.
It's a very, 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 very happy Monday. Welcome to another episode of Let's Start Justice with Jamaicans for Justice. My name is Michael Jackson.
My name is Jade Williams. I thought you were going to say a title.
Oh, okay. Well, all right. Executive Director of JFJ.
Policy Research and Advocacy Manager at JFJ.
All right. So today's topic is the right to education. So it's back to school time.
Yes.
So while we're going to be having this discussion on the radio show, we're going to be having some social media posts, Jade, on the right to education, including the proposal that we made to the Joint Select Committee reviewing the Constitutional Reform Amendment Act.
Yes.
Yes, that's the name of it.
Right.
Right. So I just wanted to share those perspectives with the listeners as the show goes on today. And we're going to be having some back to school vouchers for winners. 2 winners, I think we anticipate having based on what we have. So just follow our social media page and you will see those updates.
Right. So
Right.
that will start this week. JA for Justice on Instagram and Jamaicans for Justice on Twitter.
All right. So one of the discussions I want us to have, Jade, but towards the end of the program, is what is in the manifesto that's relevant to JFJ's mandate.
Mm-hmm.
So we're just going to be having a quick discussion, Jade and I, for our listeners, focusing on certain topics or headings or thematic areas.
Yes.
Justice, constitutional reform, and governance. Just to have a quick discussion in terms of our immediate reaction as an organization and what are some of the things we find it important to follow up on as an organization, whoever emerges the victor following September 3. There are other things we have in our personal interest, but that's not for JFJ's platform, all right? So we're just going to be focusing on justice matters across the 2 manifestos, and I hear a light is to come sometime today.
Yes, I heard that as well.
So we will see if there's any emerging things coming out of the light manifesto later this evening. But certainly for today's topic, just to look at constitutional reform, justice, and governance across the 2 main manifestos, because I know the Jamaica Labour Party, interestingly enough, they have a manifesto on education.
Oh, yes.
That perhaps will come out in some of the discussions that we're about to have in short order. So we're going to be joined by Shanique Bowden, who is the Executive Director of Jamaica Youth Advocacy Network, JAN, and Mr. Travis Banks, who is the Legal Officer of the Jamaica Council for Persons with Disabilities.
Right.
Yeah.
Before we get to it, though, we do have a trivia question for today. Our trivia question for today is related to this right to education. So what section of the Constitution, which specific section? So I don't just want section 13 because we know that section 13 contains all the rights. Which specific section has the right to education? And we know that that right is limited to the pre-primary and primary levels. So which section of the Constitution has that? And or did you know for today is from our Child Care and Protection Act, and that is section 28. It speaks to the duty to secure the education of a child. So anyone with the responsibility to care for a child between the age of 4 and 16 years must ensure that that child is enrolled in and attend school. And if the person cannot afford school, then you know you are to reach out to your minister or to your Child Protection and Family Services agency to get that support. So the Charter of Fundamental Rights and Freedoms guarantees the right to education in Jamaica, giving every child the opportunity to learn, develop, and prepare for their future. This right is also tied to our international commitments here in Jamaica made under the International Covenant of Civil and Political Rights and the Convention on the Rights of the Child. Now, access to education is essential for breaking down cycles of poverty, promoting equality, and strengthening democracy. And education must be understood as both a personal pathway and a empowerment pathway to collective investment in the nation's progress. Now, we've seen some challenges that continue to emerge in our education sector. Some students continue to face issues such as limited resources, we see shortages of teaching staff, violence in schools, unequal access to technology, or even just unequal access to the schools themselves, because we have students that are living with disabilities. So what more do we need to do to ensure that access to education is equitable and that all Jamaican students are able to access it? So
do we have our guest on?
Yes. Okay, all right. So we have Mr. Travis Ebanks. We are
awaiting Miss Bowden.
We are waiting Miss Bowden.
While we wait on Miss Bowden to join us and welcome Mr. Ebanks, just to put some things in context as we have this conversation for our listeners. Now, we know that the Constitution is the supreme law, the law that governs all other, right? And it's important that we look at what is in it. And the right that we have, it's almost, when you look at the right to education, it's almost a child rights rather than something that really spills out for all Jamaican, understanding that the literacy rate isn't what it needs to be for adults as well. So you have the right to pre and primary level education in Jamaica, but it doesn't speak about quality. Right. What does that access actually means? What about the quality education, which is an important distinction to make? When you think about things like, and these are specifics, it's not going to be in our constitution, but you will have other laws and policy that guides it, or guide rather. Things like the numeracy specialists and the things around early childhood education. So when JFJ made our submission to Parliament, the Joint Select Committee that I mentioned earlier, we looked at guidance to other jurisdiction, Guyana, South Africa, and how their education right is so beautifully spelled out. So JFJ's recommendation, for example, we contemplated whether the right to education at pre and primary level should be expanded to now increase to tertiary level. Should it be increased to secondary level? Notwithstanding some of the policy directive that the government is having, like the pathway program that the Jamaica Labour Party now implemented. So for those who don't know, you have the pathway program that really says you can get access to sixth form at no cost for 2 years, right? So you can go and get a skill. You don't have to do A-levels. But what exactly does that mean now for adults who perhaps, you had, it's not Jamal anymore, the Jamaica Lifelong Learning program that deals with adult literacy. Should those aspects be in the Constitution? So this is a little bit of a food for thought as we have the conversation and really delve through some of the elements that were also in the Patterson report. All right? So let's put that in context for our listeners so that we can have a fruitful discussion with our guests who are now both on.
I thank you for joining us, Mr. Ebanks, Shanique Bowden from JN. Thank you both for being here.
My pleasure being here this afternoon.
All right. So, thanks. So I think I'll start with you, Mr. Ebanks. If you could just put into perspective for our listeners what some of the challenges are for persons living with disability in accessing education.
Yes. Again, good afternoon, everyone. It is my pleasure being here to share with you some of the concerns that members of the community do experience in accessing education and how the Disability Act fit with those challenges. So first and foremost, there's an array of challenges that members of the community faces, and oftentimes it is from the aspect of accessibility. So oftentimes our school infrastructure or education infrastructure are not accessible to enable persons with disability to access education, which is so vital. You would have earlier mentioned the fact that it is a right under the Charter of Fundamental Rights and Freedom, 2012. And so it is important that everyone has equal opportunities. And these are some of the challenges that prevent persons with disability from getting the opportunity to access education as the Act defines it. So to begin with, the foremost challenges are accessibility, and then other aspects of inaccessibility that persons encounter include the inability of teaching, what would I say, teaching instruments and how teaching is carried out, oftentimes prove inadequate to meet the needs of persons with disabilities.
Okay, thank you for that. So I think what I'm hearing you saying is that there's a problem with access in terms of physical access, and there is a problem with access in terms of the delivery of information for persons with disabilities. Have we lost Mr. Ebanks?
Can you hear me?
Yes,
we're hearing you now.
Absolutely. You're correct.
All right.
Let's go to Ms. Bowden, and then we pick up on some conversation on the issue with Mr. Banks, because I have some question about integration and what was the School of Hope. I'm not sure if that still exists. But Ms. Bowden, I know Jayan released a youth manifesto. I'm not sure if education was one of the pillars that you had indicated in that manifesto.
Yes, of course. Education is amongst the pillars that we have. Largely what we're looking at, and in particular Mr. Ebanks have touched on it a bit as well, is around equity and accessibility around the education system. But I think even before we get to that, our education needs a full reformation. I mean, we've been hearing about it in piecemeal ways for the last several years. I think they had started doing a review of the Education Act. I can't even tell you what the status of that is, because much like with everything else, they start and stop. But we know our Education Act is quite dated. But as we look at where we are now as a society, and I think even post-COVID has really caused us to rethink how we're going about education from a more digital standpoint. I think what we need to be looking at is a more modern and relevant curriculum that is adaptable to today's world. As one of the key points coming out of our manifesto, we're looking at inclusive education, which is, Mr. Ebanks touched on it in terms of persons with disabilities, but especially like intellectual disabilities and those who are neurodivergent, to ensure that they have access to the same opportunities that able-bodied students have, is one such way to sort of start the conversation. I just to even use it as a tidbit. One of the things that I always said, I've left high school 10 years now, and back in my day, I thought the only thing I could have been was a doctor or a lawyer, so I went to law school. That is not the case now. But even so, sometimes we get invited at JN to go to career day, and one of the things that they always ask me, they're like, "Oh, we know you're an attorney, but we want you to come and tell them about the non-traditional things you do as an attorney, because that's interesting. Kids want to know about other things that aren't just doctor, lawyer, Indian chief, as the expression is." But we even do still find this narrative of certain careers being pushed. And I think that's largely how we are still attacking the curriculum. So we need to be looking at more diverse ways to engage our children, that they still get the core values and the core information, but that they can also see opportunities beyond just what is the ordinary. Last thing, AI, that's the thing right now. And we keep saying that, AI is coming to take our jobs. But the reality is that they're also offering a lot of opportunities that we can leverage, and ensuring that children are using AI in the proper way, for lack of a better expression, and using it as a way that they can also identify potential career opportunities out of it.
Yeah, thank you so much for that. As Ms. Bowden was speaking just now about what is in the curriculum, as I started out to say that the government does have this pathway program. So you don't have to do the traditional A-levels as some of us are accustomed to, but you can take a pathway that's non-traditional that will give you a skills. The question is, where is that integrated in the curriculum? So it's not an end result to say that if you don't follow the traditional way of getting to the engineering, the doctor, the lawyering, and so on, you could have had this being integrated at an earlier stage, so it doesn't seem like you're just doing this because you weren't adept at something else that is a little bit more traditional and acceptable. So we're going to take the break, and then we pick up with both our guests and some of the other elements of the discussion.
When you want the food shell and make the rice well, just gimme, me can Kendall. When it's out, Kendel. Give me Kendall.
Another quality product from the CariMed Group.
Just give me Kendall.
The time by Kendall Foods. The taste of quality is
1:15.
Spring into style with Unique Living. Upgrade your home with our extensive range of products. Get sleek shower panels, stylish vanities, LED and non-LED mirrors, plus kitchen sinks, closet solutions, ceiling fans, and more. Available in various finishes and sizes. Visit shop number 6, 30 Dunrobin Avenue, Kingston 10. Call 876-755-3661 or visit our website at www.uniquelivingja.com. Don't wait to spring into style with Unique Living.
Ever wondered how to spot a scam before it drains your account? Or how Jamaica's top financial crime fighters track down the money? Join the Financial Investigations Division on Nationwide this morning, every first and third Friday at 8:20 a.m. for FID in Action, an informative, engaging feature designed to keep you and your money safe. Learn practical tips to help you spot, prevent, and report financial crimes. Understand how the FID protects the financial system. That's FID in Action, protecting you, preventing financial crime. On Nationwide this morning, every first and third Friday at 8:20 a.m. Brought to you by the Financial Investigations Division.
Welcome back to Let's Talk Justice. We're discussing the topic of the right to education, right? And we have two great guests with us, Mr. Travis Ebanks, who is the legal officer of the Jamaica Council for Persons with Disabilities, and Ms. Shanique Bowden, executive director of JAN. Just to pick up with you, Mr. Ebanks, you gave such a great overview earlier. And I just wanted to understand from where you sit the matter of integration. I'm not sure if we have the School of Hope still in existence where children with intellectual disabilities would attend. So if you could speak to that and then perhaps expound a little bit on the enforcement challenges that you may have in terms of adherence to the Disabilities Act.
Indeed. So there are several institutions that currently offer programs and are tailored rather to meet the needs of persons with disability. As you made mention, the School of Hope, the Hope Valley Experimental School, and other institutions does assist in that regard, and that is their sole purpose to ensuring that individuals with disability students can access education here. They're integrated in a setting whereby the delivery of the curriculum meets their needs, and that would be the hope that as much institutions follow that model. But as it relates to how is it that we're able to enforce equal access to education, I wish to point out that under the Disabilities Act, it provides a comprehensive protection for persons with disability, including right to education. So it is not only the Charter of Fundamental Rights and Freedom, but the Disability Act itself does provide or does seek to individuals with disabilities having the same access to education. And so the Act prohibits discrimination in all aspects of public life, and most importantly, education. And it mandates that in educational institutions, be it private or public, must provide equal access and reasonable accommodations to students with disability. And so these do have instances whereby parents would have made complaints of institutions who are not facilitated to individuals with disability. And from the council standpoint, we have done our own part in ensuring that we reach out to some of these institutions, we engage them along with stakeholders such as the Ministry of Education. And so far we have had success in that regard. So notwithstanding the shortcoming, the council from where it stands has been very proactive in ensuring that once a complaint is made to the council, that we intervene and engage our stakeholders to ensure that members of the community get the same access and opportunity to education.
Thank you for that. You know, just as a little bit of a follow-up from where the council sits, if you could guide us on whether there has been an assessment of sorts, across the varying education levels, around assistive technology, learning aids, and so on, whether the educational institutions at the varying levels are compliant with the Disabilities Act. So just to reframe, I just wanted to have an understanding of whether or not the council or the Ministry of Education, perhaps, if you have done any assessment as to the levels of compliance across the different educational levels, around, whether or not you have the learning aids to meet the needs of children with disabilities.
Yeah. So one of the units at the council, which is the Access, Compliance and Investigation Unit, we have so far commenced our own investigation to assess where these institutions are. As a current start, we are in the assessment period. And so, as you can understand, Jamaica is not small as one would might believe. And so, at the end of it, we should be able to have a better understanding of where the gaps are in the system. But as you made mention to assistive aids and other devices that enhances learning, and so that person with disability can have access, the council does provide assistance from where we sit by providing grants and other programs and grants and other scholarships that will enhance individuals to access assistive device that will enable them or aid them rather in the learning process.
Thank you so much. Ms. Bowden, you had mentioned in your opening earlier that children with disabilities, thankfully, and commendations to your organization on including the particular group in your right to education pillar, if you will. Can you expound on that just to get Jan's perspective here?
Can you repeat, Mikkel? You want me to expound on what exactly?
Children with disabilities, whether your manifesto or from where Jan sit, just your views on what is needed in advancing their particular needs and right to education.
So, no, I don't think, but essentially, when we think about just access and equal footing for everybody, we want persons who are disabled, students who are disabled, students who may have, learning disabilities, to be able to access the same level of learning. And if I could just speak anecdotally, when I was in high school, for example, just something as simple as there was a young lady who had spinal bifida, was in a wheelchair. For our entire class, basically, they had to move class to the library instead of the computer labs, which are all on the third floor. And yes, we were fortunate to at least have a library that, had a ramp, and so they could have the class there, but maybe not all schools are like that. And so in the past, and I'm hoping that this is really not the case now, you would hear of students being turned away because the schools physically cannot accommodate them due to their physical disability. And that's just the physical disability aspect. But even just having resources around sign language interpretation, for example, as well. Yes, we have the special schools that they can go to, but I do think, we should be looking at a space where students can go to their high school of choice, irrespective of what their ability is, and be able to afford it all the necessary resources and support that they need in that high school. And so we're thinking about things around like how we train our teachers to ensure that they're also disability sensitive, that they understand that, not everything looks the same way. And I even want to use the opportunity to touch on, yes, we have physical and learning disabilities, but even mental health as a sort of how debilitating that can be for persons within the school system, to ensure our teachers are able to notice these sort of signs for, anxiety and depression and ADHD and those sort of things from the onset, so that they can get the support that they need. Because those are things that also contribute to their education outcome. If I'm a young child who has ADHD and I'm just labeled as bad and disruptive, that is impacting me and my development as a student in the school. But really and truly, all we need is somebody who has the necessary foresight to realize that, hey, Danik actually isn't just disruptive. She has a mental situation that we need to address and we need to figure out. So I think those are some of the things that we are generally considering, that we want a more inclusive approach to how we think about education. That yes, we have the schools that are there for these students, but that shouldn't be the norm, but rather the exception, and that all schools should be retrofitted in such a way from both their physical space to their manpower to their human resources to be able to account for all children, despite irrespective of their different diversity.
Thank you so much. You said something, Ms. Bowden, and I want to put that to Mr. Ebanks. In terms of early childhood level for children with disabilities, are there any special considerations that you think should be made or areas of reform that should be strengthened? Because Ms. Bowden touched on a very important point that sometimes our children may have disabilities that should be carefully managed and we should be sensitive to. But we label the child as bad, duns, as Jamaicans speak, and so on. What areas of reform is necessary at the early childhood level specifically?
Around this time period, and so the council will be making its recommendation. And one of the concerns highlighted here, raise no value, is one of them that the council also have. Yes. And what we're hoping for is an expansion, so that individuals, so that parents, so that guardians who would have suspect that their child or ward is acting in certain manner, that they can be assessed. And so from as early as possible, they can get the necessary treatment. They can be placed in the necessary program that would aid their growth and development. And so I think that is one of the most critical things that one can put forward at the moment to address the situation from as early as possible. Because once you're able to have them assessed from the early age, get them into these specialist institutions, then you realize that how they receive and how they're able to maneuver through the system is different.
Yes.
And so then you can have them integrated. But as Ms. Bowden indicated earlier, and that is the hope of the council, that we do not have specialist institution alone for persons with disability, but rather that the education system is inclusive. Mm-hmm. So whether or not my child wants to go to, or my child can go to any institution of their own choosing. So it is not something that is specifically dedicated. Whilst we're saying, yes, you will have institutions, or you need institutions that will tend to specific needs, at the same time, we want the education system to be inclusive and not one that feels segregated. Yes. Because what we have also learned, and what the studies have also shown is that in integrated systems, when peers are able to see each other operating and learn in the same environment, they thrive off each other, and that is exactly what we want. And then it would provide better mechanism for them to integrate in society.
Yeah,
and so we're hoping. Yes.
Yeah, no, I agreed, and I think it may also reduce the stigma and the discrimination often faced by the community, wherein you're accustomed to, you're used to. This is my friend, and there is something unique and special, but not in a discriminatory way. Yeah. So in my humble opinion, I think that integration serves several purposes. I want you both to stay with us just for a few more minutes, because I think it's important to have the conversation around parental involvement as we talk about the right to education. Yes, systems are important. Yes, the reform from the government is important. But how can the government assist in having increased parental involvement in ensuring that the right to education can be so realized? So we take the break.
At the Jamaica Customs Agency, we care for our employees, customers, stakeholders, citizens, and our country. Customs cares. The temperature by the Jamaica Customs Agency is...
So we're dying here in Kingston at 34 degrees Celsius and 32 out west in Montego Bay.
Importers, clear customs, not your schedule. Download the JA Customs Connect mobile app from the Google Play and Apple App Stores and enjoy the ease to calculate your customs duties, search for tariff codes, track and trace your shipments, pay your declarations, and so much more, all in a click, right at your fingertips. So save time, save money. Download the JA Customs Connect mobile app today. It's fast, safe, and convenient. For more information, visit jacustoms.gov.jm. JA Customs Connect mobile app, powered by the Jamaica Customs Agency. Jamaica Customs, keeping our customers in focus.
Welcome back to Let's Start Justice. We're discussing the matter of right to education. And just for our listeners, because I really hope we're paying attention to the cycle. And it's not just the silly season. I disagree with that term in some respect. You know, when we're speaking loosely, we say the silly season. But it's a season where we look at the policies of the main political parties. We assess them. And this is one of the topics that you hear on the political platform, the right to education, what exactly the political parties are proposing. And one of the conversations being had by both political parties is parental involvement. What mechanisms should the institutions be putting in place to ensure that the parents are more involved, so you can see improved educational outcomes coming from our children at different levels. So let me pick up with Ms. Bowden to ask if there is any perspective from Jan on how parents can be more involved, but more so what the state can do differently to increase and improve parental involvement. Ms. Bowden?
So,
yes.
Definitely a very good question, Mikhail, and a very interesting perspective to really tackle it from. Of course, we recognize that parents, you know, the kids will spend 8 to 10 days at school, and then it's up to the parents to sort of figure out everything else. But
8
I
to
think
10
there's
hours.
a saying, and I always get saying 8 to 10 hours,
Yes.
yeah. 8 hours a day, and then the parents have the rest of the time. But there's a saying that, you know, your first school was your home, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
And so we do recognize that parents, from an institutional standpoint, do have a very important role to play. And I'm not really sure if we, JN, have like a sort of like organizational position on it, so to speak. But if I could use as for example, when we were doing our sensitization sessions around the school nutrition policy, we had some sessions with parents particularly, who many of them recognize that yes, they have a very important role to play in that process, because something as simple as if they don't give their child callaloo at home, them child not going to go to school and eat callaloo, because they're going to tell them parents, my mother don't cook that give me to eat, so why may I come here and eat it at school? So I tell their teachers rather than they're not coming to the school because that's not what I eat at home. So we are trying to impress upon parents in that particular example the importance of healthy eating at home, so that it can translate into a sort of value setting that children can expect when they go to school, because that's literally how it works sometimes. If our parents emphasize the importance of things like reading and things like mathematics and, you know, speaking properly and those sort of things, that translates into how we conduct ourselves in school. When we read during the summer, it's easier for us to read through the school year because our parents set that foundation. So I think I'm not really sure what the state particularly can do, but I suppose I want to say it's a call to parents to recognize that they themselves are also their children's teachers, and that they have to set certain foundations within the home to ensure that they can do well while they're at school. They can't want them to go to the Campions and Ardens and Glenmuir, but when they're at home, they're not, you know, helping them with their homework or even ensuring that they do homework. Even if their parents don't have the capacity themselves to help, but just simply do their homework and checking to make sure they know they do it properly, and then do it brand new when they come to parent-teacher conference and hear say, Shani, you never did nothing at school at their time, and she also not doing it at home. So that's some simple things that I suppose as an appeal to parents to recognize that they have a very important role to play from a supportive standpoint, to just be abreast of what is happening in their children's lives, to be aware of, you know, where it is that they are at school, checking with their teachers, just like show interest, and not just beyond making sure them have lunch money and them have bus fare to go to school,
and clocks.
but talking to them and those sort of things, just
Yes.
I guess a simple viewpoint, not so much an organizational position, but a sort of call to action to the parents themselves.
Yes, thank you so much. Mr. Ebanks, from where you sit, what can be done differently from the state, perhaps, to improve parental involvement? You mentioned something earlier, which is very critical, the signs and what to do should you see your child, exhibiting certain behavior. What can be done differently?
Absolutely. While the council does not have a policy perspective on this, I mean, anyone can appreciate that the involvement of parents are foremost critical. And as Ms. Bowden indicated, the first individuals that a child may contact with is their parents.
Yes.
And so I think one can say that if parents are equipped from the get-go, from the clinic stages, from the prenatal stages, because based on ultrasound, one can determine or it can be diagnosed whether or not the child will have a disability. And so I want for that day, I call for that day when we will start training from the clinic stage up onto birth. And from that get-go, I can assure you that we will arrest a lot of the shortcomings that we have to this point. And so at that point, I do believe that parents, mothers, fathers, and the community in general will have a better appreciation of what it means. They will have a better appreciation in understanding their young one, because oftentimes it is a lack of understanding. It is ignorance that causes missed opportunities.
Mm-hmm.
And so we're saying that if the system can be put in such a place whereby, just as how early mothers are taught how to care for a child, if the same application can be applied and parents are also taught how to treat and handle with their little one, then we will have a change in behavior, and eventually we will see better parenting as it relates to dealing with children with disability, and how the education system deals with persons on a whole.
Yeah. All right. Thank you to you both. Any last words before we end? Starting with you, Mr. Ebanks, and then closing out with Ms. Bowden.
Yes. Thank you very much. The Jamaica Council for Persons with Disabilities stand ready to assist parents with access, with their child getting access to education. Is one of the foremost reasons why the organization stands today. And I just want to indicate again, I reiterate that the council does provide a range of assistance services to include grants and scholarships.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll close that. The Margaret Moody Scholarship is now open until the 31st of this month. And it is a scholarship of persons with disabilities attending a tertiary institution. And we're making a call to invite persons with disability and who are registered with the council to apply for the scholarship. Also, we recently launched the MyJCP, the I Am Able app, and it is a game changer in how individuals with disability can access the services of the council, not just the services, but also make complaints and get a raft of benefits that the council provides. So I do encourage persons with disability to make use of the opportunities.
Thank you so much. Where can they find the information for the council?
They can find there is a Jamaica Council for Persons with Disability on the jcpd.gov, that's JM. There is also the MyJCPD I Am Able app, which can be found on the Android Play Store and also on the iOS operating system. So we are all over the place, I would say.
Thank you so much. Ms. Bowden, last words from you?
Yeah, so I think for me, we didn't really get to touch on it, but when we're thinking about like safety in schools and those sort of things, I think what I would want to say to our policymakers especially is that they have a very significant duty to ensure that our children not only have the best education in terms of what they're learning, but in terms of the spaces that they're allowing our children to occupy for the time that they're there. And so I would really want to see some emphasis and some deliberateness from our policymakers around ensuring that there are strong policies and programs in place that are intended to support and protect our children from, any sort of abuse, harm, ill treatment, those sort of things, both from their teachers, principals, students themselves, and ensure that they're putting in place the relevant programs to ensure that they can have the best quality education experience as possible.
Great. Thank you so much. Really appreciate having both of you on the program. That's Shanique Bowden and Travis Ebanks. Have a good day.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye. All right, listeners, just to indicate as well that the Ministry of Education, they actually have a unit that deals with safety in schools. So if you recall, we've had Richard Troop on the program already speaking to some of the initiatives and the areas for improvement. So, for example, you have the school resource officers, which are officers from the Jamaica Constabulary Force. You have the deans of discipline. You need more. Guidance counselors, how, those work together in a harmonious way to ensure that safety and security standards of our schools, they're improved and adhered to. So you do have some of those programs already, but of course we will benefit and can benefit from scaling up. All right. Now, I said at the beginning that Jade and I will be going through the manifestos, and you know the position from listening to us in previous weeks or prior weeks where we indicated the importance of the manifesto. And, just before we started though, I know most voters, let me not say most because I haven't done a survey, a significant number of voters, I assume, have made up their minds already in terms of which wind they wish, the direction on September 3. But I still think it's important that we have manifestos at earlier dates where we can fully review, digest, and the media houses would have an opportunity to go through in a comprehensive manner as to the commitments being made and when commitments were previously made. Because if you read these manifestos, as I have every election cycle, right, I can tell you off the top of my head, but I won't on the JFJ program, recycled commitments and who holds these political parties to account when they make them. And it's important that you have what you call vertical accountability, which is accountability from the citizens. I've heard this before. Timelines. The program manager in me, it's painful reading these documents where there are no timelines. They need a little Gantt chart, as a matter of fact, in them. Yeah? But it's important because when I vote you in, this is what I will use to hold you accountable.
Yeah.
So it's very, very important. So I really want to impress upon the listeners to read the manifestos. They're on the political parties' website. And I think we should demand more from the third political parties, as a matter of fact, because we're making these calls from the two main political parties, but nothing from the third. I don't know their position in a written format that I can go back to and really read through and digest. They don't have that. I have to be listening back to when you were last on Nationwide this morning or in another radio program to say, oh, what did you say again? Unacceptable.
Yeah.
So, very, very important, which is why Jade and I were going to be having this discussion. So you have the JLP manifesto open. I have the PNP. My eyes are not good, and I can't put on my glasses. I only have one handle, right? So
you can't be saying that on live on air.
It's embarrassing, eh?
Yes.
But I don't mind disclosing because the listeners will, for those who are watching on YouTube, will see me squinting the eyes because I can't see a thing. Mm-hmm. But I will make my best effort in reading through, and you will tell us what is in the JLP manifesto. So we take the break, and then Jade and I will pick up on some other things across justice and governance and so on, yeah?
It's Monday, get over your blues. For Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. The E-Zone is here for you. With this thing of Honeybee.
And Curry Boy things
from 3 to 5 p.m. on Nationwide 90 FM.
We've got your entertainment news.
Then we want to hear your views. Why you say?
Jump in the mix.
Or the hot seat.
Don't miss our brain busters.
Or the crazy giveaways.
Let's talk fashion.
Send us your outfit of the day. Ooh, cutesy. Very demure.
Are you looking for love?
Come on one of our blind dates. Send your request to ezoneblindates@gmail.com. That's ezoneblindates@gmail.com.
And stay tuned for your confessions.
These are my confessions.
Share them with us at ezoneconfessions@yahoo.com. I mean, is this planet Earth?
Is it?
I don't know. Let me check. Either way, it's got a buzz.
And a bugger thing.
Ow! Ow! Tune in to What the Streets Are Say every Tuesday during Affairs of the Heart at 10 a.m.
What y'all say?
From the corners to the calling line, we are trying to find out where the streets really are say. We are bring the vibes from the streets to Affairs of the Heart. Where the streets are say about relationship, politics, just about anything you can think of. We want to bring the vibes in at the studio to Affairs of the Heart. Lucky into Where the Streets Are Say every Tuesday during Affairs of the Heart at 10 p.m.
What y'all say?
Brought to you by Chicken and Things, rich taste of Jamaica.
All right, welcome back to Let's Talk Justice. I was properly, I can only say berated. That's the word that comes to mind, that Jade gave me just now, because I mentioned on air that my glasses only has one handle. But I didn't want the listeners to see me squinting and wondering what's happening with the eyesight. But yes, I retract the statement, Jade. That's fine?
I appreciate it.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. So we're going to be looking through the manifestos across some thematic areas, and they're structured differently. So we will be, managing that as we have the conversation. So Jade will be going through the Jamaica Labour Party's manifesto. I have the PNP's manifesto on screen. So I think we can start by indicating very quickly for the next few minutes the areas of interest: constitutional reform, justice, and governance as those areas that JFJ primarily focuses on. So the PNP, they have a section called Justice Reform that deals with constitutional reform. You have the JLP section on that?
Yes, it's efficient and equitable justice. Well, we have more than one section because there is a section that also speaks to constitutional reform specifically, that is under the governance section.
Yeah. And let me say this. I think both political parties have done a little bit of a pandering to the public. Yeah? So, in other words, things that you may have an interest in to voters, there is some broad line about consideration of. So there's a little bit of that. But both manifestos, in my humble opinion, they're good documents that is quite worth the read. So here in the PNP's manifesto, they talk about constitutional reform for sovereignty and justice. And it speaks to engaging with civil society groups, the churches, the business sector, and so on in constitutional reform. It speaks to hosting public fora for Jamaicans to debate, implementing school and community outreach, and launching, which I don't understand this separate line because I would assume that's a part of the process, launching public education and awareness programs. Now, I think I may have to speak from memory here, Jade. I can't see a thing here in the orange box. All right, yes. So the key reform being proposed by the PNP includes the Caribbean Court of Justice. You know their position on that already.
Yes.
They make mention of replacing the British monarch with a Jamaican president that is chosen and accountable. That is chosen and accountable to the people, which I flagged this as a concern for me because what is in the manifesto and the utterances made by the People's National Party, they're saying two separate things. So you get a sense in the manifesto that you will have a Jamaican president chosen by the people, elected by the people,
right.
But the other statements made by members of the PNP suggest that I have not yet firmed up on a position and it may very well be a nomination process. So that is something I believe is worth a little bit of a consideration. And this is where I said pandering to the public. Consideration of fixed election dates and term limits being made here. Impeachment, and I'm happy that it's not just impeachment being made by the PNP, but also recall provisions, because remember, the right to recall is a right that is to be exercised by the citizen. And I think the impeachment without the right to recall is not something that we should support. All right. Another thing, pandering to the public, in my humble opinion, is expanding the Senate to include the diaspora. Yeah.
Yes.
And I'm just picking out, this is not the full thing that is in the document.
Right.
So from the JLP standpoint?
Well, I think we know that the JLP would have been the party in power when we started this constitutional reform process. So as far as discussion about constitutional reform, their positions and those kinds of things, I think we can look to previous statements. In the manifesto itself, though, they speak to an increased awareness of the Constitution, of laws and governance, the general continuation of the constitutional reform process, increased legislative drafting, modernizing access to information and increasing that as well. And these are all under the stronger and better and fairer governance and constitutional reform section of the manifesto. So I think, again, partially because this was an initiative that the JLP would have been in government for, they have not expounded much in the manifesto.
Which I found disappointing, personally.
Yes.
Because there's a difference between you leading what ought to be a consultative process versus me knowing what your party position is.
Right.
They're two distinct things. And I found that section to be wanting more.
I have to agree there. I do think there could have been a little bit more in terms of, again, the party position. I can understand that we would have gone through several pieces of the process already, but I think that seeing as we're in this moment of flux, it would have been a good time for the party to say strongly some of its key points on some of these issues, which they maybe would not have been able to do as clearly when you were definitely in government.
And interestingly, fixed date election and fixed term, it's not in the manifesto, and that was a promise. That's what I mean by accountability as well. All right, Justice Ministry. And by the way, the PNP, they don't have a justice area separately, but I've held back on discussing some of their legal and legislative reform because it will incorporate some of what is, spread across the thematic area of justice. All right. So you want me to go ahead with what's here while you...
because of the structure, so we have under JLP's manifesto, we look at the security, we look at justice, and then we look at human rights, right? So if we're just to look at justice, the initiatives that we're looking at is paperless, the digitized paperless court system.
Which is very good.
Love that idea. I don't know if we're actually there.
But I mean, they're charting the way forward for the next 5 years. That's their proposal.
I don't know if we're there for 5 years. I'm sure my colleagues in the legal fraternity might have a comment or two about
whether
that.
or not that's realistic in the 5-year period.
Yes. The construction of judicial complexes, so this is infrastructural construction, reduction in the court backlog. As we know, while the parish court has cleared up, there's still some backlog in the Supreme Court and in other courts, coroner's court, etc. Mediation policy development. This one was a bit challenging for me as someone who has been looking at mediation reform for quite some time now.
And the promises made by the Justice Minister for a mediation legislation.
Yes, and we would have seen it in throne speech after throne speech. So, to see that we're all the way back to policy development is concerning for me. Restorative justice and child diversion to scale up those programs. JFJ, I'm still waiting from the ED's desk our research to be made public.
Did you just say that publicly?
But JFJ has been looking at the justice, these reforms in the Justice Ministry in terms of child
diversion working and
restorative justice and the expansion particularly of the child diversion program. We would love to see what that would look like, what is being considered. But
I think that needed more as well, given it's one of the flagship programs of the Justice Ministry. And they've been doing an excellent job, but I think it needed more in terms of what you meant by scaling up in a more ambitious way, if you will.
I can appreciate that.
Yeah. What I liked about the PNP's manifesto, and there are some areas, my God, it's just so broad and abstract, I don't know what exactly it means. Advancing gender equity and protection of the elderly and the rights of persons with disability, that needed more. But what I like, one of the better policies coming out of the program here is access to legal aid. So you know that the Legal Aid Council primarily helps in criminal matters. So if you go to the police station and you want some assistance with duty counsel, that is there. But the PNP is saying let's broaden the scope to include civil matters. That's a revolutionary proposal. My challenge with the PNP, however, similar to the JLP, things that you discussed before, you drop it without an explanation. So the PNP, if you may be aware, certainly their last party conference, they mentioned the National Human Rights Institute, and that is not in the document. So that was a little bit of a disappointment. So I want to know that there's continuity in your positions as an organization, because it's not like you form government and you've started something while there is a justification for it being dropped. So therefore, I question some things when I don't see it again in the document. Yeah,
we did see a quick mention of the legal aid process in JLP's document, but just to say that, you know, they would be expanding the resources available to legal aid and trying to do fast tracking in terms of those matters that are related to mentally ill persons,
which is good,
and minors in conflict with the law. So I can appreciate that comment, but I would have loved to see you know, a similar proposal in terms of extension of what legal aid can do, particularly in the case of matters of constitution challenges, you know, like those kinds of issues that would have seen Kensington Primary School case or something like that. To have the parents being able to get legal aid for those kinds of challenges is something I would want either party to consider.
Yeah. I think the gender-based violence section in both political parties' manifesto was quite well done. Now, not to say that I don't have criticisms. I'm not sure if we have enough time to go through it, but I think generally it's quite well done. The Jamaica Labour Party making some commitment to review the framework, which I found interesting given that they only met twice from my recollection of the Joint Select Committee. But kudos to the JLP on the Sexual Harassment Act really coming to form.
Yes.
And
tribunal
implementation.
In place and so.
Yeah. And over by the PNP, I see them talking about a mobile app to report the gender-based violence in real time, which is very, very important, and tying that to the shelters, which we know that the current government had started. I believe there's 2 that's operational now, but you know that you need some areas of strengthening, and the PNP is saying that, listen, let's have it parish-based, which I think is quite similar. All right, I think we're coming up on time, but... Governance, anything jumps out to you in governance on the JLP's manifesto?
Well, I did see a point here about the strengthening of anti-corruption and oversight bodies. I like that point, especially considering, you know, or what should I say? How the past few years the attitude towards anti-corruption and governance-related issues have been. I'm happy to see that there was a clear mention of maintaining and supporting those systems in the manifesto. So I'll leave it there.
Yeah. And my last comment again to the PNP, you have some good things, but again, a little bit of a pandering, because unexplained wealth order is not in the manifesto. But you heard the party leader jumping up to say, and the unexplained wealth order will be mentioned. But the good thing about the PNP's manifesto, is a good point here to close on, is the inclusion of civil society in parliamentary committees and processes that they had mentioned, which is very, very important, and we welcome as a civil society organization. So it comes down to which party do you think will better implement? Because in my humble opinion, there's no discernible ideological difference between the two.
Yeah.
But that's where we have to leave it.
Thank you for that, Mikkel. Before we go, just to say that our Instagram, our winner for the trivia question came from Instagram, The Humble One. We respond to you via DM with your prize. The answer for the question was, what was the question again?
We chat out the time and Damien looking at us. So
yes,
we will share that on social media when Jade
we'll share it on
remembers.
social media. But thank you so much for joining us. My name is Jade Williams.
My name is Michael Jackson. Have yourselves a very, very good week.
Jamaicans, by justice, the people's champion, champion. Justice, justice for all. Justice under law. Justice, Jamaica demand. Right to life, right to liberty. Out of many we are one in a Jamaica, Jamaica. Make it a better place for the boys and girls. Created equal by the creator. For equal rights and opportunities. No to unlawful detention and police brutalization. Class, gender, race or religion. We not tolerate discrimination.
To join the fight against injustice, contact us at 755-4524 or Jamaicans4Justice.org.
The people's champion.
The NHT is lending up to $12 million for homes priced at $14 million or less, making home ownership more accessible for Jamaicans. We are building Jamaica.
The time by the Office of the Prime Minister is
1 minute after 2 o'clock.
Importers, clear customs, not your schedule. Download the JA Customs Connect mobile app from the Google Play and Apple App Stores and enjoy the ease to calculate your customs duties. Search for tariff codes.